We'll do that. There we go. Excellent. I had the wrong thing up. Okay, looks like this is it. This is the whole enchilada. We are live streaming. Excellent. Okay, well, we want to welcome you all to the Gospel Truth. Got a great surprise for you here today. This has been a long time coming. If I can find this. Where's it at? Right there. Okay. Da-da-da-da! Trent Parrott, the return of Trent. He's with us, back with us. So, like I said, this has been a long time coming. We got some good stuff coming up tonight. We have Brent Bishop calling in, hopefully, in just a little while, and we've got a debate we want to talk about. We've got a chosen topic about the Old Testament prophets. Believe it or not, Trent, there's a guy out there, a preacher in the Church of Christ. Can you believe this? Is actually teaching that all Old Testament prophecy has been fulfilled, but there is no prophecy about the second coming of Christ in the Old Testament.
I can believe it.
I can't. I sent a message, wrote a comment on his little article, and I said, "Are you sure you want to maintain that position?" So
Well, he's wrong, but
yeah,
yeah,
he's definitely wrong. So anyway, that's some things we're going to talk about. We have still trying to get my both cameras set up here, so we got everything squared away, and it looks like we're good. So hey, I see Roy Runyon there. Great to see you, Roy.
The professor.
Look what they've done here. Remember how the comments you could watch them as they came in? Now you actually have to scroll down to see them.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how to fix that. But maybe one of these days I'll figure it out.
I don't know.
Okay. This is... No, I don't want that in a new tab. So we'll just deal with it. So, waiting on Brother... Brent Bishop to give us a call. Brent has he's been giving these guys a rough way to go, but we can talk about not in a bad way, in a good way. He has been putting it to him. Matter of fact, speak of well, not the devil, but hey brother, we've trying to get you on speaker here. Looks like you're good to go. Hey Brent, how are you?
All right. Good. Hi, John. I'm driving home, so if I lose you, just give me about 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
I may go through a dead spot here.
Yeah, we can work around that. No issues. So, hey,
piece of paper.
I told...
Oh, never mind. I don't know.
Actually, there's some... They're just taken out of the bottom of the thing. So, or I can find you one.
No.
Maybe there's some. I don't know. Sorry, a little disorganized. Okay, so I kind of filled in our audience what we're going to do tonight. One of the things... we got Trent here, by the way, if you didn't catch that.
Oh, hi, Trent.
Hi, Brent.
So, told everybody essentially what you've been dealing with. And this preacher who says, yeah, all the prophecy's been fulfilled. It's just there's no prophecy in the Old Testament about the second coming of Christ. Brent, I read that article. Well, perused it really quick. I think I got it all. That he wrote part 1. Is he serious? Can he honestly want to take that position?
Well, yeah, I don't know, but I know my son-in-law dealt with him about a year ago or so on a Facebook page. And can you guys still hear me?
Yeah. It's kind of...
Okay.
The level's kind of down a lot.
Sorry, I might drop right here. I'm going through a dead spot. Am Am I okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So my son-in-law got Samuel Matthews to admit that he was wrong about the Old Testament prophets not mentioning the second coming. And so he screenshotted those comments over a year ago, and he's kept them. And now Samuel Matthews, I don't know who he is, but he's a member of the church somewhere, I believe in Oregon. He comes on the Church of Christ page that I moderate for, and he reverts, and he makes this long article stating that none of the Old Testament prophets spoke about the second coming. So I don't know if it's hypocritical. I don't know if he didn't realize that we would still have what he said over a year ago. But if you go on to that post, he admits on the screenshot that I placed there that the second coming was mentioned by the Old Testament prophets. So I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if he's reverting. I don't know if he is confused or what. But I just thought it was odd that he would say that when he has admitted to the contrary.
Probably got pushback.
Yeah, that's my guess. He got in trouble by the Brotherhood for seeing the truth, which is sad.
Or something. So and Norm Fields has contended for this idea too, and so I put up a video the other day rebutting the whole thing, but Norm Fields also would contend that the Old Testament prophets did not speak about the second coming.
Yeah, I got to watch most of that while I was doing show prep.
When Norm Fields and I were in our so-called debate, I don't really even know what you would call it, but anyways, I asked him a question, and he really bombed. I asked him about the abolition of death, and he got upset with me that I used the term abolition. And so Norm said, yes, they did. And I responded, well, if they did, then you've given up your argument that none of the prophets spoke about the second coming, because the abolition of death would occur at the resurrection in AD 70.
Mm-hmm.
So
that makes sense.
It's a contradiction.
Sure.
And so if none of the Old Testament prophets spoke about the second coming, but they spoke about the abolition of death, then I fail to see how they didn't speak about the second coming. So you have the second coming at the end of the Jewish age. And that by that second coming, Christ would abolish death. Well, if they spoke about the abolition of death, which would be Isaiah 25:8, 26:19, and also Isaiah 65, then they spoke about the second coming, because the abolition of death and the second coming are concurrent. They're synchronous. They happen at the same time. So these men have given up their argument completely, and they don't even know it, John. That's the problem. Is they don't realize what they've done.
Oh yeah. Well, Brent, I'm not convinced that they don't know it. Real quick, I want to say hello to a couple people that are joining us. Looks like Mark Robbins. Good to see you tonight. Julie Hand. Excellent to see you as well. I already said hello to Roy Running, but we'll do it again. And who else did I see here? Amanda Jarrett, great to have you with us tonight. Been great corresponding back and forth with you too, by the way. I appreciate that. So I'm not so convinced that they don't see it. Because, Brent, I see it, you see it, Trent sees it. Why can't these guys see it? Um, I saw it before I saw it, if that makes sense. I mean, I knew what it said. It's just I didn't accept it. There's the problem. It is so plain and simple and easy to see if you're willing to open your eyes and not listen to everybody that around you that's telling you, "Oh no, that's not it."
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but wouldn't you call that rebellion?
Okay, let me put it this way. Here's my take on it. A lot of people have asked me, well, if you don't believe in eschatology, are you going to be lost? So let me address that. My answer to that is yes. Well, and no. I think eschatology and understanding eschatology correctly, from a preterist standpoint, in other words, everything's been fulfilled, brings out the good and honest hearts in people. And that's not to say that people that don't understand it do not have a good and honest heart. But everybody's in a process. They're in process at some point. There are those who, when they see it, they blacken their heart and they turn their heart from the Lord. That is rebellion. That is what causes a person to be lost. So the answer to your question is yes. There may be a caveat to it, but yes. I mean, it's rebellion. If you reject the truth, how can you be saved? That seems pretty elementary to me.
Yeah, I agree that God gives us grace and helps us to see things that we don't see right now, that we should see. So I recognize that there is grace for people who are honestly seeking, and they may not see it yet, but that doesn't mean that they're lost any more than any other doctrine, that you can come up with.
Yeah.
Whatever. But God gives us grace. But when a person high-handedly, they see it,
Yeah,
and they know in their heart that it's true, and they can't argue against it, and they still rebel against it. That's what I'm calling rebellion.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
now
I agree with
they
that.
have, and that they're going to basically sin away the day of grace, I guess you could call it, in their rebellion. So, you go over to Malachi 3, and Malachi 3 is definitely talking about John the Baptist. When you go over to Matthew 11 and 13 through 17, Jesus applies Malachi 3 to John the Baptist, and he also applies it in Matthew 17 to John the Baptist.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt that Malachi 3 is applicable to the ministry of John the Baptist. So there in Malachi it says that the Lord will come quickly to his temple. And that was during the generation of Elijah, which was the messenger, John the Baptist. Well, that's not in reference to the first coming, because by the time you get to Malachi 3 and 5, it talks about judgment there. And so God would judge the adulterers and the sorcerers, and he gives a whole list there. The perjurers and the false accusers and all of that.
Yeah.
And so that cannot be. The coming of Malachi 3 is in the context of God judging the nation. Well, in John 3:17 and also in John, I think it's 12:47, Jesus, in his first coming, he said, "I did not come to judge the world." And that word there, judge, is krino in the Greek, and it means to condemn. So Christ didn't come the first time to condemn the world. The judgment of the world would come at the second coming. When you look at 1 Corinthians 4 and 5, judge nothing before the time until the Lord comes. So the judgment is for the second coming. Well, Malachi 3 is in the context of the Lord coming quickly to his temple, and he would judge all of the adulterers, the perjurers, the liars, and all of that. It's in the context of judgment. That's the second coming, when he comes to his temple. And that's him coming to the temple to destroy it. He destroys the nation.
Wait a second.
So,
So is what you're saying, could you possibly be saying, alluding to, pointing us in the direction of, or just flat out telling us that there are prophecies in the Old Testament regarding the second coming of Christ?
yes, there are many prophecies about the second coming in the Old Testament.
So this guy, what was his name? Samuel
Matthews.
Samuel Matthews. So Samuel Matthews, somebody needs to tag him. I can't tag people for some reason when I'm doing a video. But so he says that there's no prophecies. I mean, is he maintaining this?
I think so, because that post is original to either today or yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very recent post.
Yeah, it was current. So does he have any idea? He's teaching essentially what we teach, other than we teach all prophecies been fulfilled, including the fact that the Old Testament talks about the second coming of Christ. There's no way this man can.
I don't know if he knows what he's teaching, because a little more than a year ago, he agreed with my son-in-law that the Old Testament did speak about the second coming of Christ. And then either today or yesterday, he put up that post stating that none of the Old Testament prophets spoke about the second coming. So it seems like he's reverting.
Yeah,
but I don't think he was planning on us having screenshots from over a year ago.
I love it.
And so now he's in a pickle.
Yeah. So here's Trent. I don't mean to be talking all the time, but so these people are so desperate that we were talking about this earlier. These people are so desperate to prove us wrong that they're willing to sin to do it. You know, that's.
Well, yeah,
I think that's a problem.
I don't know. I don't know what context he's coming from, John. I just don't know, but it just seems very, very strange and contradictory. Why would you now contradict something that you believed a year ago and write a huge article, 2 huge articles, part number 1 and part number 2? I don't know why anyone would do that unless they've completely changed their mind. And that's okay if that's what he's done.
Right.
But he's doing it without a jot or a tittle of explanation. You know, you and I would go, yeah, we changed our mind, and here's why. And then we spend, several hours explaining why we changed our mind on this doctrine.
Right.
But he did it without a jot or a tittle. No explanation at all.
Well, it's the deer caught in the headlights is what it is.
Well, I can tell you from experience. I can, without talking to him, I don't know for sure, but I would love to be able to talk to this guy. Talk to him live, not exchange messages. I don't like that stuff, but I'd like to talk to him and find out, because typically what happens, from my experience and what I've seen John experience and others who have experienced the same thing, that for me, like at Greencastle, when I was showing these truths to a couple of the guys that I was friends with, they sit and they read it and they let the Bible instruct them, and they see it, they agree with it, they say, well, yeah, this has got to be true. So then, they get this thing in here. They get this idea. Well, I'm going to go share it too. Well, then they share it with someone else whom they have, a lot of trust within the church. And that person says, oh, no, 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 no. No, 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 no. That can't be right. That's not right. That's not right. So then they start to back down and they start to withdraw from it. Well, I can't study with you anymore. And then the person that they talk to comes to you privately and says, well, you're wrong. But when you invite them to study, they've got 100 excuses why they cannot study. One guy told me, I work 12 or 14 days in a row, and then I get 2 days off. My wife would kill me if I used any of that time to come and study with you. That's what he said to me. But he tried to get me to stop sharing it. So when I didn't, then you get the other people involved that come at you. Well, you're wrong. Well, tell me why I'm wrong. Well, you need to talk to this guy. We're going to send you to another minister at another congregation. I'm like, no, you tell me. Well, they can't tell you. But so what happens is you start getting this pressure. So I kind of suspect that this guy, when he did that, someone saw that in the church. I don't know if is he a minister?
I think he is a preacher. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe
I don't know if he is.
Maybe an elder or someone within the church who thinks he knows it all says, "Oh, wait a minute, you're wrong," and he backed him down, and the guy backed down from it. Or he went into a study with this guy, and they changed definitions, and he was convinced otherwise. I mean, that's what they do. They try to. We see it in a political world. We see it at schools, in government schools. You cannot have a thought or show any evidence contrary to what the general belief or understanding is, and then they apply their pressure. I mean, you see it even in the judges. Brent, you're an officer, you see it in the judges. Even the judges are swayed by public opinion. So when someone of authority comes at you and he can make your life miserable, they tend to back off, and then they retract whatever. Now the thing is to sit down and try to talk with this guy. But I imagine if he's like these other guys that just kind of ran from me, he's gonna avoid it at all cost.
Well, maybe I don't know, but I was just recently studying Malachi 3. And I'll put the challenge out to any Church of Christ preacher. If they want to debate Malachi 3 and 4, it is absolutely talking about the Lord suddenly coming to his temple. And in verse 2, who can endure the day of his coming? That's Revelation 6:17. And it's talking about the Lord refining the nation, purifying the sons of Levi in Malachi 3:3. That's also 1 Peter 1:22, where they would be purified by the blood of Christ. And in verse 5, he says, and I will come near to you for judgment. That's the second coming, the judgment of the second coming. And I will be a swift witness against sorcerers, adulterers, against perjurers, and against those who exploit wage earners. That's James chapter 5, and widows and orphans.
Right.
And so
that's Galatians 6.
Yeah, Malachi 3 is a second coming passage because it is in the context of God coming near to them for judgment. And that cannot be referring to the first coming of Christ, because Christ came the first time as the Lamb of God, not to judge and condemn the world, but to save it. He would come a second time as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, in order to judge the Jewish world and destroy it. And that's exactly what he did. And that's the context of Malachi 3 and verse 5. There's no denying that. There's nothing anyone can say that can change the facts of the context. And he continues that context into chapter 4. For behold, the day is coming, burning like an oven. That's 2 Peter 3, where everything's going to, in the Jewish world, is going to be burned up. So, and it will leave them neither root nor branch. That's exactly what happened when Rome came in, they were consumed completely. Both body and soul were consumed in the judgment. So I know that these guys would try to make the claim that this is referencing the first coming of Christ because it mentions the messenger, but my argument would be that it encompasses the time of the messenger, the generation of the messenger, but not the first coming, because the first coming was not a judgment coming. It was Christ coming as the Lamb of God, and the second coming would be when God came near to them for judgment.
Yeah,
so it's in the context of the judgment, and we know that 1 Corinthians 4 and 5 judge nothing until the right time, until the Lord comes. So that right there proves that the coming of the Lord, the second coming, would be the time of the judgment. So you have your context. So, Norm Fields and Samuel Matthews and any other Church of Christ preacher would be dead wrong. And there's many, many, many other scriptures that deal with, in the Old Testament, that deal with the second coming.
Brent, I would go back even, into Genesis. There's a couple of prophecies of that in Genesis. There's a prophecy of it in Exodus when God told Moses that on his day of visitation, he was going to visit all of the sins of the people. God told, so not only do we have Christ, but we have God coming in judgment too. And so then you see in Hosea that the same language is spoken, that he's going to come in judgment. So there's just there's a small handful that I can point to. It's talking about this coming in judgment, which would be, the second coming. And I think it extends on into Daniel. Probably every prophet, if we studied it and looked at the Hebrew of it, we would see that there are many passages talking about the coming in judgment. But what people do, I think, is that they have to say that there are no prophecies of the second coming in the Old Testament, because they think it was a new revelation given to the apostles, and it's divorced of Old Testament scripture. But anybody who has studied the Bible and sincerely studied it, they see that the epistles and the gospels were written, and many times, more often than not, they were quoting Old Testament scripture. So now you look at in Jude, when it says in Jude, it talks about that Enoch prophesied of his coming with thousands of his angels. See, so
yes,
it was Enoch. So I mean, this is ridiculous. This position is just ridiculous. It shows. I'm not, I'm not real sure what I can define it as, but it's really kind of scary.
Well, it shows that they don't really know what the New Testament says about the Old Testament prophets. That's what it proves. It shows that they're ignorant. You mentioned Acts chapter 3 and verse 21. And in Acts 3, Peter says that all of the prophets, from Samuel and those who follow, as many of has spoken, have foretold these days. So when you go back to Acts 3:21, he's saying that heaven must receive or retain Christ until the times of the restoration of all things. That would be the second coming, which God has spoken by the mouth of all his holy prophets since the world began. So if all of the holy prophets have spoken about the times of the restoration of all things, and heaven would retain or receive Christ until the times of the restoration, then they spoke about the second coming. So you even go back to verse 20, Acts 3 and 20, that he may send Jesus Christ. That word send in verse 20 is the second coming.
Exactly.
Christ had gone away, and so he says that he may send Jesus Christ. Well, the sending of the Christ is the second coming. So Acts 3 and 20 is referencing the second coming. So is verse 21, the restoration of all things. Heaven would retain Christ until the times of the restoration of all things.
Yeah. Paul spoke of it too.
So here we have the prophets mentioned as speaking about these times. And every prophet in the Old Covenant either spoke directly in prophecy about that, or they spoke in type.
Yes.
So even the prophet Jonah, who was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale, was a type of Christ. And so Jonah bore witness to the times of the restitution of all things through the very events that he went through. So every prophet spoke about this event. They spoke about the second coming in some form or fashion. So once you see what Acts 3 and 20 through 21 is referencing, it's undeniable. And I don't know why they don't see it, but they don't.
Hey, Brent, let's put some rubber on the road here for our listeners.
Well, can I interrupt you real quick?
Sure.
Brent, I want to read you something, and then I'm going to ask a question. And John wrote, he said, "And I fell at his feet to worship him, and he said unto me, See thou do it not. I am thy fellow servant, and of the brethren that have the testimony of Jesus. Worship God, for the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy." Now you're telling me that all of these major and minor prophets prophesying of Christ, and the testimony of Christ is prophecy, right? That they would prophesy of his first coming, but then completely ignore and disregard the second coming? Now, how can a Church of Christ minister say that they don't, that the Old Testament prophecies did not prophesy of a second coming, but they can turn around and they can take the example of Philip and the eunuch, and where the eunuch is reading Isaiah, and they're going along the way, and it says, the only thing it says is that Philip began at that point in Isaiah, and he opened his mouth, and he preached Jesus. And then the next thing you know, the eunuch says, "See, here is water. What hinders me from being baptized?" So they can turn around and say, "Well, if you're gonna preach Jesus, you have to preach baptism." But then they turn around and say there's no prophecy. They can make that connection with baptism, but they can't make that connection in the Old Testament. It's a lack of study. It's a willful ignorance, and it's an open rebellion. So
Yeah,
what are your thoughts?
it is definitely a lack of study and ignorance.
It's willful.
I think so. It's willful, Trent, as soon as it's pointed out to you. As soon as it's pointed out to you and you say, "No, I reject that," now it's willful.
Exactly.
The first time it was pointed out to me, I had an epiphany. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, this is exactly what it means." I could see it. And
Right.
I'm sure you guys can see it when it was pointed out to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the only reason why they're not able to see it is because they have to uphold a pet doctrine.
That's right.
I would love for any Church of Christ preacher in the Brotherhood to challenge us on this. I'd love to have a debate.
They're not going to do it, Brent.
On this issue. I would love for any Church of Christ preacher in the Brotherhood, regardless of their education, to find a prophet in the Old Testament that did not speak of the second coming of Christ. That's my challenge. Find a prophet in the Old Testament that did not speak of the second coming of Christ. Let's debate that issue. That should be easy to do if their doctrine is true.
Yeah, that'll never happen.
You get a lot of Facebook and YouTube commentary back and forth on it, but you never talk to anybody personally live, and they're gonna obfuscate and do everything that they normally do, and then resort to calling you a heretic and damning you to eternal hell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that may be, but the challenge still stands.
Speaking of debate, I
want a preacher in the church to show me one prophet in the Old Testament that did not speak about the second coming of Christ in some form or fashion.
There it is.
Okay, so real quick, I'm going to press the pause button for you, Brent. Here on the screen, for anybody who's interested in this, there's a debate that's going to be taking place in a couple weeks on February 19 and 20. And there's the information. It's going to be held in Vincennes, Indiana, and this is a debate which is, as far as I know, never happened. I don't know if this has ever happened. We've got two preachers versus one preacher. So the debate is me and Steve Baisden affirming that Jesus has already come, as he promised he would, and Eric Gersbacher says, no, that's not what the Bible teaches. And Jesus certainly didn't teach that he would return in their lifetime. And he's denying that. So that's going to be a very interesting debate. 2 nights. Starts at 3 p.m. And it is going to be live streamed. Hopefully on Facebook and YouTube, just like it is tonight. At the very least, I'll record it and then upload it. But I think we can live stream. They said they have really good internet. So that'll be good. So I thought I might make a plug for that. Now, as far as these other debates, Brent, look at how Norm Fields dealt with you when he was, what is it, the crab or the lobster or whatever, the proverbial lobster in the pot. And once he realized that it was getting hot, he was at least smart enough to realize he was cooking. He had to get out, and his fight or flight response kicked in, and he chose to run. And that's all that happened. He did not and would not defend his position. And the sickening thing about this is all of the people that back him and patted him on the back and just loved him, they were fine with it. They encouraged it. They supported it when he walked away from the debate. Now, Brent, you and I both know, and Trent knows, and anyone else who's ever been a part of a debate or around a debate or watched a debate, if the guy is there debating live, Brent, he never would have done that.
No, he couldn't have.
No, he wouldn't have walked away. There would have been way too much egg on his face. But he found a way, and this is why we need to press these guys. Live debates. Hold your feet to the fire. If I'm wrong, I'll change. If you're wrong, will you change? Stuff. But they're not going to do it. So I give this Eric Gersbacher, I give him a lot of credit because he has went against those guys. And he has said, I'm going to do it. Whether you support me or not, you should support the truth. So I'll give him credit for that anyway. But no, that's how it winds up. When you tied Norm in knots, he did not even know what to say. And now, to listen to him, he was tying you in knots, but I know better. There you go.
Brent had the Bible and he had conjecture. So
yeah.
Norm had conjecture and tradition of men, and Brent had had the truth. He had the Bible. I mean, you can't defeat the Bible.
So Brent, I need to hear this from you, and so does everybody else. Why is it important to understand that Jesus fulfilled all these prophecies like he said he would? Why is that even important? This is probably one of the top 3 questions I get asked. Why is it even important? Is the person going to be lost if they don't understand it? So why is it important to understand that Jesus did what he said he was going to do?
Because if he didn't fulfill the law, then the law could not pass away. And if the law could not pass away, we ought to be offering the blood of animals. And if we're offering the blood of animals, we don't have the blood of Christ, and therefore our sin remains.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, amen. That's true.
Yeah.
So either death has been abolished and the resurrection has occurred, or it hasn't.
Now wait a minute.
If it hasn't, the law remains.
You're telling me that death has been abolished, but I know that I'm going to die. I think you're crazy, Brent.
No, John 5:24. If you believe in Christ, you will not come into judgment, but has passed out of death into life.
Yeah, judgment is death.
But that can't be what that means. That's impossible. Certainly,
No,
Jesus was not saying that you would
it's
live
not
forever.
impossible. It's a reality.
But
So just
but
because
people
a
die.
person doesn't understand the Scripture, doesn't make it null and void. It doesn't mean that it's not true. It doesn't mean that it's not active.
Oh, so there's 2,000-year-old people still around? Only the Christians are from the first century are still alive, hiding out.
No,
somewhere?
we would have to look at death the way the Bible describes death.
Well, death
That's a
is
good
death.
point.
Okay, death is death, though. You can't have 2 definitions for death.
Correct. But you can have 2 applications, one being sin death, the other being physical death.
That's right.
I'm not going to argue with that.
Yeah, and death, you're right. Death does mean death. You don't have two different definitions of death, but you have 2 different applications. One, or the 2 different natures, let me say. One is the spiritual nature, one is the physical nature. So
That's
if
actually pretty
Christ
good.
came to redeem us from Adamic death, the death of Adam, which is the death of the garden, you sin, you die, then he most certainly has conquered death. He has the keys to death and Hades. He's not referencing physical death at all. I know our brethren think that because they're in a carnal state of mind, but he's not referencing physical death. He's referencing Hadean death. Oh, Hades, where's your victory?
Yeah.
See, 1 Corinthians 15:55. So he's referencing Hadean death. He overcame the death of Adam. So it's just a matter of understanding, the terms or even the nature of those terms. And, we were all there at one time. But, we've learned better, and we're more informed.
Yeah,
So, I'm forgiving our guys the grace they need to grow. And, I was upset a little bit as to how that debate went with Norm, but maybe there's a blessing in it somehow. I know that there is, because I know I've been in contact with one person in Georgia, a member of the church, who has come our way, and he watched the debate and he started asking questions because of it. So
I probably shouldn't say this, but I have to. Every time we debate, somebody sees it and changes their viewpoint. There are good and honest hearts out there, and they, when confronted with the truth, they will change. Now, will everybody? No, they didn't in the first century, and not 1 century since then, and they're not going to do it today. It's not everybody, but the good and the honest hearts will change when they see the truth. So it's called conversion. It's never easy. It's but it should be a joyful thing, don't you think? To rejoice in learning the truth, something that you didn't know before, and embrace that. That's the way it should be. So what you're telling me then, when Paul told Timothy that death had been abolished in 2 Timothy 1:10, that Paul was wrong because Paul thought it was physical death. Is that what you're saying?
How did Paul think it was physical death?
I don't know. You tell me. You're the one teaching it.
Oh, are you talking about in 1 Corinthians 15?
2 Timothy 1.
Oh, 2 Timothy 1 and 10.
Yeah.
No. That's
because
it's not physical death at all.
Because the only resurrection that Paul ever teaches is physical resurrection. He never teaches a spiritual resurrection. So this has to be physical.
He taught the resurrection of Hosea. So when you look at Hosea 13 and 1 and 2, that's where I took Norm in one of his programs. And I asked him, I said, well, you read Hosea 13 and 1, and I said, what kind of death is that? I said, if they died through Baal worship, what kind of death is that? He admitted, well, that's got to be spiritual death, sin death. I said, okay.
I love it.
Okay. So in Hosea 13 and 2, it says they sin more and more. So I said, a dead man can't sin, so it has to be spiritual death. I said, so you're admitting that spiritual death is the death in context here. The context of Hosea 13 is spiritual death. He said, yes. I said, so, okay. In Hosea 13 and 14, when Hosea says, I will ransom them from the power of the grave, and I will redeem them from death, that's in the context of spiritual death. O death, I will be your plagues. O grave, I will be your destruction. And he didn't like that.
Oh, I wonder why.
He kind of threw a little bit of a fit over that, and he denied that. But the death of Hosea 13, where Paul quotes from, 1 Corinthians 15:55 is a direct quote from Hosea 13 and verse 14. But the death in this context is spiritual death from Baal worship. It's not physical death. So Paul wasn't referencing in any way, shape, or form physical resurrection when he quoted that in 1 Corinthians 15. Because he's quoting the prophet in context. And the context of Hosea 13, from which he bases his whole argument on, is spiritual. So this, Paul has to be referencing in context what Hosea said about spiritual death. Thus, it's got to be a spiritual resurrection, not a physical resurrection. And there's nowhere in the text where it says that it's a bodily or a physical resurrection.
Well, here's the deal about this. People are going to see what they want to see. They're going to believe what they've already been taught. And it's our job and responsibility as gospel preachers, as Christians, to teach the truth, whether they like it or not, whether they listen to it or not. But we also need to know that there are people who will listen. Norm is not one of those people, obviously. And most people aren't, but there are a few. So my encouragement to you, brother, is you just keep preaching, you keep teaching, you keep your congregation going and growing, and, that's all we can do. We're not going to flip the world for preterism. Maybe in time, there will be many more. There are a lot of preachers today who are seeing it. But I want to give the last part of the show to Trent. He's been on hiatus for 3 years, just about. So I want to give him some time to get reacquainted here with our audience and say some things. Brent, I really appreciate you. You stand for the truth. I love you, brother. I just Minnesota, not Minnesota, Missouri. We're going to Missouri, right?
Missouri, yeah.
In August, yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. Be praying for this debate that's coming up here in a couple weeks. Steve's got another debate with the ever impressive Stephen Whitsitt. That is going to be a nothing burger.
That'll be exciting.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah. So, but anyway, Steve's doing it right, and there will be what he's doing though. Steve is able to go into, and I think Holger's going with him. They're going into a denomination, and they're going to teach them the gospel, and they're going to prove it through eschatology. So it's going to be fantastic. And Stephen Whitsitt gave us that opportunity. So awesome. Okay.
All right,
well,
I'll let you go, John. I appreciate the time on your program.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Much love to your family and all those little grandbabies you got running around. So you just keep on keeping on.
Okay, thank you, guys.
All right.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Can you hit the X or whatever it is? Okay, that worked. Okay, so Trent, I know you probably have a blue million things you want to say. So take it away.
Well, I have a question, something that just been kind of going in around my mind a lot here lately. If the death that Adam and Eve died on the day that they ate the fruit was the symptoms of physical death, then I have to ask, if that's the case, then why would God create a planet among all of the stars in the galaxies from infinity to infinity, and form a planet that man could live, that beings could live on and thrive, if he was just if what they suffered was physical death on the day that they, because he could have done that. He could have created a physical body in heaven, right?
Mm-hmm.
A biological body.
Right.
He could have created it.
After all, he can do anything he wants, right?
Right. He could have created a physical body, biological body in heaven that would live forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, so why go through all of this and to build a physical planet to give someone eternal life on Earth?
Yeah, about that.
I maybe one of these, maybe Stephen Whitsitt can answer that. He's a Bible scholar. I'm sure he's probably listening, or maybe what's the other people that's got 15 different names on Facebook?
Oh yeah.
Maybe they
Plenty
can
of
answer that. So why would I mean everything God does is logical, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's good, and it's his hand is in it. It's good, right?
Right.
So I would just want to know from you scholars out there, why would he have to create an Earth in order to create a physical, biological body, and then threaten to kill that biological body if you sinned? Because did he not cast down the angels he sent? So he had all of this. And you're telling me that they didn't have free will in heaven? Obviously, they had free will in heaven because they sinned, right?
Right.
So maybe one of you astute Bible scholars can explain that, how and why God did that. Now, so here's the thing. Here's the truth of it. God did not create Adam and Eve to live biologically, physically forever. That was not in play. There was going to be a beginning here on earth for them and a physical, biological end for them. So the death that they suffered was spiritual death, or God lied and Satan told the truth, because Satan, or not Satan, but the serpent told the truth and said, in that day that you eat of it, you will not die. God didn't say that I'm going to pronounce a sentence of death on you, and you're going to live another 800-900 years.
No.
He said, on the day that you ate of it, you're going to die.
Yeah. That's exactly what he said. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, either God lied or the serpent lied.
Well, the problem is people think God is just a spineless spiritual jellyfish. He doesn't really mean what he says. So like, it's kind of like modern parents. They ground you and then nothing ever happens.
Yeah, they give you
You know?
time out. They don't
Yeah.
know what a belt is.
Yeah, they ground you and then they raise your allowance and take you out to spend it.
Give you another video game to brainwash you.
Yeah, so God doesn't really mean what he says. So when God said, the day you eat, you're going to die, no, that's not what it means. Well, then God says, well, I'm going to flood the earth and everything's going to be destroyed, but I'll never do that again. Well, God didn't really mean that.
Yeah. And he gave it a qualifier, right?
Yeah,
He gave himself an out, right?
right.
Like
Yeah,
God needs an out. Did you know that?
yeah, he does.
He has to have an out for himself because he has never thought of this.
Right.
He's never thought this through. I mean, 6 days, he just created something, just threw it all together and
Yeah.
didn't think anything about it. I mean, this whole idea of Christ, it was foreknown before we were even created. Pshaw.
Mm-hmm.
That can't be true either.
Yeah, no. That's impossible.
No.
Obviously, we're being facetious about that. When God says something, he means it. And if Adam didn't die the day that he ate thereof, then Yahweh, God, is just as much of a liar as his son, Yeshua, Jesus, who said, I'm coming back while some of you are still alive. And if he didn't do it, then if God's just a jokester and a trickster, then Jesus was just the same. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
And he even told Peter. He said, Peter asked, Peter was told his future, and he was gonna die, a pretty brutal death. And of course, Peter and I are probably alike, but he's a much better man than me. But he probably, like, oh, well, what about this guy? Well, what's it to you if he's alive if I come? Whatever John is and whatever John does has no bearing on what's going to happen to you and what your duty is in order to teach.
Isn't that just... So this guy, Paul Ralph. Now, I'll tell you right now, I love this guy. He's very simple. He thinks slow. He speaks a lot. That one of those kind of guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's got a good heart. I think he's trying to be a Christian, but he does that all the time. And he says, "Well, history says that John lived to be, in his 90s, and he didn't die until 100 A.D."
So then that means he was alive when Christ came back then in 70 A.D. So
right.
There you go.
Yeah. So that was exactly my point.
Yeah.
Who cares how long he lived? The fact of the matter is, when the temple fell, inspiration stopped. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
It was done.
There was no need. No more preaching. For this judgment coming, because it had come to the world.
Right. Yeah. So
no more warning the Jews anymore.
Yeah. So great that John lived to be 100 years old or 150. It doesn't matter.
And I'd like to know whose history. People quote this stuff like they say all the time. Well, preterism didn't come around until 1970s with what's the guy, Max King.
Max King.
And then you're like, no, it was a guy in the 13th or 14th century that Spaniard. Oh no.
Yeah.
It's the near coming of Christ was preached in the first century, to happen in the first century.
Yes.
Preterism, whatever you want to call it. I call it the truth. It's the truth. It's what the Bible says. It's not. It wasn't created by some 13th, 14th century Catholic priest. It wasn't created by Max King or any of the followers of Don Preston or any of these guys.
Yeah, exactly right. I didn't do it. I don't want to do it too either.
John, you take someone who is just opening up the Bible, who's not a Christian, but says, okay, wait a minute, there's got to be more to life than this. This every day, this routine that we go through, there's got to be more than life. You mean we were born, we live, we die, and that's it? So they begin reading the Bible. You sit down and you show them some of these passages, and you ask them, what do you think it means? And they say exactly what the Bible says.
Wow. I know.
You show them Matthew 16, 27, 28. Ask them what it means. Yeah, you show them John 21,
Did you see the post?
2021. You show them.
I think it might have been, I don't know if it was Jeff Cunningham or who it was. Yeah. But they had posted a excerpt from a debate several years ago. I don't know, it was 40, 50 years ago. Might have been longer. When this preacher was, I don't know who he was debating, but it was over eschatology. It was over preterism. And he says of Matthew 27, 28, he says that anybody who does not separate those two verses is not a Christian. That was his argument, essentially. If you don't separate Matthew 16, 27, 28, you're not a Christian.
If you don't believe the way I believe, you're not a Christian.
That's what it boils down to.
If you don't separate it because it's separated in Mark 9, 8 and 9, Mark 8 and 9, 38 and verse 31 and 1, and
Mark 9.
Yeah, see, well, so I'm going to help Catholic preachers and one priest who divided the chapters and verses. So you throw the Catholic thing in there about preterism, I'll throw the Catholic priest. I think that's who it was. But yeah, I mean that is. Didn't he know that there are no punctuation and no ending sentences in Greek and stuff like that? So it was all meant to be read as one document.
Yeah. Well, like I said, these guys are willing. They're so desperate because, Trent, you and I both know how easy this is to see. It answers so many questions. It puts to rest those difficult questions that most preachers won't even touch. And I'm not saying that I've got all the answers, but it clearly shows me that the Bible has all the answers, and I found a bunch of them through this.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's easy to see. It's hard to get over. That's the problem. It's hard to get over how people are going to react to you.
The cognitive dissonance is a hard thing to overcome. If you have a hard time admitting that you're wrong, if you're one of these people who must be shown by a group of people that what they did was wrong before you will admit it, then you're not. Then you're stubborn.
Yeah.
You know, or if you're someone that wants to turn and run and discount what he did, you know, a narcissist is someone who will turn it back onto you.
Oh yeah.
And blame you. But if you're someone who has a personality that you find it hard to admit that you're wrong, sincerely that you're wrong, you're not going to change.
And that's sad. That's sad because a person will live a lifetime of not knowing the truth. And the truth is what sets you free.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in bondage before I understood this in so many ways. And now that I see it, I know that I am free. I know it. I don't have to live that way anymore. And that's the victory.
Mm-hmm.
The full futurist group and you know, the hyperfuturists, they do not understand the victory of Christ. They have a Savior that did nothing other than die, got himself killed. That's pretty much where they're at. That's sad. That is so sad.
You know, I think about this a lot because, um, and you and I were just talking about this a few days ago about why these ministers and these elders stay so steadfast in something they know is wrong, uh, and uh, and that they succumb to this peer pressure
Mm-hmm.
or this brotherhood pressure. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the Church of Christ is to be autonomous, but it's really not. You see how they work because these elders and ministers work with these other congregations, and they know personal things about each other uh, and the members of these churches that they shouldn't know.
That is a fact.
And they gossip and stuff. But we talked of why do they stay in that? Well, there are a couple of benefits. Well, number one, in a fairly decent sized Church of Christ, these ministers are making, the low end probably $55,000 a year,
Mm-hmm.
which, if you're in Indiana, that's pretty good money. In some of the other states, they're making 85, 90. Some of the ministers here in Indiana are making 85 and $90,000 a year as a minister, and they live really comfortably, and that is hard to give up because, so they're easily swayed to either drop the subject or just take the narrative from their brotherhood.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that, but anyway. But I wonder, but there's also a thing that they do. They have a major influence, and especially the elders have control over the flock, over the church. They preach that. That's one of the things that some of these future churches preach: the authority of the elder, and they'll go to Paul's writings about the elders and about you're to respect them and do this and pay homage. Pretty much, that they're almost like the vicar of Christ.
Yeah.
Instead of being a pope, we have these elders, and then so these people, they think, well, it's not my responsibility to know. If I need to know anything, I call an elder, and I let him deal with it, or I call my minister, and he has all the answers. So they don't study, but so when they see this truth. And then they're taught that if you go against an elder, you have condemned yourself. You have disfellowshipped yourself from the church, and you're going to bring shame upon your family. I mean, they preach this. It's almost like after they become so dependent on this authority figure. It's like we do with government.
Yeah.
We're
just thinking that as you were talking.
So dependent on our government to go in there and rescue us that we let these crooks and these criminals become politicians, and then they become millionaires, and they rule over it, and it moves to tyranny.
Yeah.
But
without fail.
Yeah, without fail. And then the church, the people see that, and I've got to be subservient to the eldership. I've got to do this. I can't question anything, and whatever they say is say. So then they almost have like the Stockholm syndrome. They're possible oppressors. They're afraid of them, and they become accustomed to it, and they're happy to be that way. Yeah. That they've succumbed to. They've become a victim of Stockholm syndrome, or, as an example, the abolishing of the slavery in the United States after the Civil War. These slaves, number one, they were never taught to read. They were actually punished. They couldn't learn to read. They couldn't learn to be anything but subservient to their owner. So after the Civil War, they get these papers and they're free to go. Mm-hmm. They stay with the people who enslaved them because it's easier, just like the Israelites did coming out of Egypt. They kept wanting to go back every time they were met with a minor hardship. They wanted to go back into slavery. Yeah. That's what these members do, and they'll sit and they'll defend their minister. They'll defend this doctrine, and they know in their hearts, they know it's wrong, but they don't know how to free themselves from it, and they're afraid to be free.
Yeah,
That's why we lost half of our congregation. They wanted that bondage. They were comfortable in it.
Yeah, that's sad. And we just keep seeing it over and over and over and over. But here's what we've got. We've got the truth. I actually came into this prepared. I thought, I'm going to go through all these passages and
Let them rip.
and show people what the concept is in the Old Testament. And Brent did a good job with that. I mean,
So maybe next week.
yeah, I mean, maybe we'll go over those at some point. But I cannot tell you the amount of people that I've come across. Not Pentecostals, by the way. Pentecostals get it.
Mm-hmm.
But preachers, elders, members in the Church of Christ, many denominations who have thought this through have said, no, there's no prophecy about the second coming of Christ in the Old Testament. And for this man to say, no, the Old Testament doesn't, like we started out talking about, the Old Testament doesn't have any prophecies about the return of Christ. Has he lost his mind? I mean, you have to literally lose your mind to be able to say, no, there's no prophecy about the second coming of Christ. They have to do that because their doctrine depends on people believing that lie.
Well, yeah, it's like your best friend. You know your best friend. You know that his or her mate or spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend is cheating on them, and they're so wrapped up in this comfort zone of being with this person and the love that they've extended to them that when you go and you say, I just can't sit back and watch this anymore. I can't do this. This person is cheating on you. First thing they do is deny it.
Oh, yeah.
And then they deny it and deny it and deny it and reject it. And eventually they get mad at you for telling them the truth.
Have I become your enemy because I tell you the truth? And that's
Exactly.
that's the way people are. That's
2 Corinthians.
Yep, that's a bad thing. That's a really bad thing. Well, that puts us over time a little bit, but I'm glad you joined in tonight. And things are.
I didn't mean to monopolize it.
Obviously, no. We'll blame that on Brent.
No.
I mean, obviously, things are starting to settle down a little bit in your personal life and the chaos of all of that, and you just don't know the amount of prayers that have been said that all that would go well. So
it's definitely helped. It has. Anybody who's gone through this, there's a couple of friends that we have who have gone through this. It is number one, it's a very expensive proposition.
Mm-hmm.
And two, it's a very time consuming. And with this scamdemic that was out and all of everything going with that and the government really working against us to punish us, and that made it even more expensive and more time consuming. It was very hectic and stressful.
But you are now 100% officially legally married.
Yes.
instant family.
Yeah.
So how's it feel to be a daddy?
You know, Noelia's kids are really just fantastic kids.
Yeah.
I don't have, there are no problems with them. They're very respectful. They do what they're asked to do. They do what they're told to do. They don't argue, fight. I really blessed. Noelia has done a wonderful job with these children.
Yeah, I know she has.
And I don't foresee any problems from them. I might see some of the problems from outside influences coming in, especially because they're both very attractive children, and they get a lot of attention. And sometimes that's not good. But they have to learn. They assimilate to this culture, and they'll grow in wisdom.
I think it's going to be good for them. I think it'd be good for all of you.
Yeah.
Obviously, I see a lot of smiles
And I like that. That's a good thing to see.
Yeah, very happy.
Yeah.
I feel definitely blessed. Could not have done it without the prayers and without God's intervention,
Mhm.
without His providential work. Because uh, we have so many things working against us, and it lays on your shoulder. It lays on you.
I just think it's pretty cool how as far as I see things, God saved her for you and saved you for her.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
that's in His time, right? You
Yeah.
know, kind of deal. So
yeah. All my life I prayed for this type of a woman, and Noelia definitely is it.
and you had to wait till you were 30 to find her.
Yeah, well, 21. 21 almost 3 times over.
All right, that's
Uh,
pretty good.
but yeah, she thanks God every night for me.
She's praying to God over you, right? One way or the other. Okay.
Yeah, right now we're just trying to decide who has the upper hand.
We already know the answer to that.
Yeah,
If Mama ain't happy, Trent ain't gonna be happy.
that's right.
Right.
That's right. I've gotten
No,
on
that's
her
okay.
nerves before, and she knows how to discipline me.
Well, see, that's weird. See, I hear guys say that all the time, and I never ever get on my wife's nerves.
No,
I mean, she comes up to me every day, and she says, "I feel like I'm in just absolute euphoria being around you every day." She'll tell me that 3, 4, 5 times a day.
yeah, I know.
And-
Man,
Yeah.
I know.
And she'll say,
I've seen it.
I can't understand why we never argue or get into any disagreements. She said, she literally told me this many times. She said, everything you say is right.
And it should be. That's right.
That's pretty much what she said. I mean,
Yeah.
as I remember it
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. That's a good story.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Stick with it.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I am awful thankful for my woman. She's gonna get me. I'm telling you what. Anyway, I am very thankful.
The
Yeah.
rib.
Yeah. Oh man, this has been enjoyable. Well, how about we try to do it again next week
Well, I
if
think
it works out.
uh,
If we're not iced in our houses.
yeah, I'll be in Florida.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Well,
I'll leave
What-
next Tuesday.
we'll do it again
Yeah,
eventually.
I'll watch it though.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, good enough. So, all right, everybody. We appreciate you hanging in there and letting us get our traction here again and get off the ground. So, be praying about the debate coming up. You can watch February 19 and 20 right here on Facebook, also on YouTube. And I didn't say hey to all the guys on YouTube. Looks like we got Mud Fossil was Armageddon, or Mud Flood. Mud Fossil, tell where my head's at. Tommy from Texas, Randy Height.
Height. Height.
Guys, I really appreciate you watching and hanging in there and making the comments. We know. Oh no, you know who this is right there? Yeah.
You have to tell me when we're off.
Yeah, okay, I will. Okay, well, anyway, so thank you all. We're going to see you next week. We're going to close out with There Is Beyond the Azure Blue. Our God, He is alive. So that helps us have a little bumper music, and I know when to hit all the buttons to sync everything to be off all at the same time. So we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much. We love you all. And hey, just keep studying. You know, that's what this is all about. It's about discovering the truth. But guys, when you figure out the truth, just follow it. It's the truth. What do you have to lose? I mean, answer that one. Okay, we'll see you next week.